Morning everybody, happy Thursday and welcome to today's reading video, which we are going to be answering our big question for this week. So before I get started and tell you what our big question is, we have got an activity that we need to do. Somehow, I don't know what has happened, but my events, these events that are describing what's happened in this second chapter have been all muddled up, and we need your help to put them back in chronological order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through these events to you, and you are going to put them into chronological order. Okay, it says the giant blew through a trumpet, should say. The giant blew through the trumpet, but no sound came out. It would stop and peer in the upstairs windows of the houses on the street. The tall black figure was coming her way. The giant stopped in front of the Gucci's house. Sophie opened her mouth to scream. What I need you to do, I need you to pause the video and check with the text and put it into chronological order. Okay, pause the video so that you can do that for me now. Fantastic. Hopefully you've all put that in correct order. Let's check your answers and see if you got them right. Number 1, Sophie opened her mouth to scream. Number 2, the tall black figure was coming her way. Number 3, it would stop and peer in the upstairs windows of the houses on the street. Number 4, the giant stopped in front of the Gucci's house, which means finally, number 5, the giant blew through the trumpet, but no sound came out. Hopefully you got that correct. Our big question today is, should Sophie tell someone about the giant's activities? Okay, think about what the giant has been doing. He's been going to people's houses and peering through their windows, sticking the trumpet in. Sophie has a big decision to make. She needs to know whether or not she should tell somebody about the giant's activities. Okay, and what we're going to do before we start, we are going to read the text. By now, I know that you've listened to me reading it for 3 days, so if you would like, you can pause the video and read it completely by yourself. Otherwise, you can listen to me reading it and join in. First thing we're going to do is start together here, and you can follow it using this. It wasn't a human, it couldn't be. It was 4 times as tall as the tallest human. It was so tall, its head was higher than the upstairs windows of the houses. Sophie opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Her throat was, like her whole body, was frozen with fright. Okay, what I want you to do is read from here all the way to here. So this was the witching hour, all right, all the way to, then it would stop again. Pause the video until you've read that read all of those sections. Okay, and now we can continue. Fantastic. But what on earth was it doing? You're going to read this next part all together with me. Aha! Sophie could see now what it was up to. It was stopping in front of each house. It would stop and peer into the upstairs window of each house in the street. It actually had to bend down to peer into the upstairs window. That's how tall it was. I'm going to read this next bit together. It would stop and peer in. Then it would slide on to the next house and stop again and peer in, and so on, all along the street. It was much closer now, and Sophie could see it more clearly. I want you to join in with me from this bit. Looking at it carefully, she decided it had to be some kind of person. Obviously, it was not a human, but it was definitely a person, a giant person, perhaps. Sophie stared hard across the misty moonlit street. The giant, if that was what he was wearing a long black cloak. I'm going to read the next part myself. In one hand, he was holding what looked like a very long, thin trumpet. In the other hand, he held a large suitcase. And we're going to read all together. The giant had stopped now in front of Mr. and Mrs. Gucci's house. The Gucci's had a green grocer's shop in the middle of the high street, and the family lived above the shop. The 2 Gucci children slept in the upstairs front room. Sophie knew that. The giant was peering through the window into the room where Michael and Jane Gucci were sleeping. From across the street, Sophie watched and held her breath. Okay. Well, we're going to read this next part together. She saw the giant step back a pace and put the suitcase down on the pavement. He bent over and opened the suitcase. I'm going to read this next part by myself. He took something out of it. It looked like a glass jar, one of those square ones with the screw top. He unscrewed the top of the jar and poured what was in it into the end of the long trumpet thing. Sophie watched trembling. Now I want you to read this part from she saw the giant straighten up all the way to what could it be. Pause the video until you've read that. As the giant withdrew the trumpet from the window and bent down to pick up the suitcase, he happened to turn his head and glance across the street. Altogether, in the moonlight, Sophie caught a glimpse of an enormous, long, pale, wrinkly face with the most enormous ears. The nose was as sharp as a knife, and above the nose there were two bright flashing eyes, and the eyes were staring straight at Sophie. There was a fierce and devilish look about them. My turn? Sophie gave a yelp. Oh, that's a yelp, like a small scream, and pulled back from the window. She flew across the dormitory and jumped into her bed and hid under her blanket. And there she crouched, still as a mouse and tingling all over. Fantastic. So as we said, our big question today is, should Sophie tell someone about the giant's activities? From what we've just read now, and before I show you my points, I want you to start coming up with some points to support the idea that Sophie should tell someone about the giant's activities, but also to support Sophie shouldn't tell someone about the giant's activities. So pause this video and try to come up with your own points. Fantastic. Hopefully you have come up with your own points, and now I'm going to share some of the points that I came up with. So to support the idea that Sophie should tell somebody, the giant was hiding in the shadowy places where there was no moonlight. And usually if you're hiding, especially when it's dark, it means that you're up to no good. The giant was also peering into people's houses whilst the children slept. Not only is this quite weird for you to be watching through somebody's houses, it's also dangerous. What if he was looking for things to steal whilst the children slept? Okay, so it's potentially dangerous to be looking through somebody's houses. It's not something that you should typically be doing. Also, the giant could have been a bad person. And in the text, it describes him as having a fierce and devilish look about his eyes. Okay, so those are my points to say that Sophie should support somebody. And I've also come up with some points for some of you at home who may decide that Sophie shouldn't tell somebody. And here are the points I've come up with. Although the giant was blowing a trumpet, no noise was actually coming out. So it's not like he was disturbing anybody by poking this trumpet through their window. And I've also said the giant was not hurting anyone. It says the giant withdrew, that is not a word, the giant withdrew the trumpet from the window and bent down to pick up the suitcase. So as you can see, as soon as he was done blowing whatever it was that he was blowing through the window, he removed the trumpet, he withdrew it, bent down, picked up his suitcase and moved along to the next house. Nobody was left hurt by what he was doing. So in that case, I don't think it's necessary for Sophie to tell somebody about the giant's activities. What do you think at home? Which side do you agree with? Remember, you're just choosing one side to write your points up. Okay, fantastic. So what we are going to do now is we are going to write our big question. The big question is, should Sophie tell someone about the giant's activities? First thing you need to do is write your title and underline it. And then you're going to open up with a great starter like, personally, I believe that Sophie, blah, 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 blah. In my opinion, I believe that, blah, blah, blah. You could just say, I believe, or I am of the opinion that. I'm going to start off with personally. So what I'm going to do is just reshare my screen so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Okay, so I've just got my steps to success, which I'm going to leave there. And I am going to write the question, which is, should Sophie tell someone about the giant's activities? So should, Sophie needs a capital letter because it's a proper noun, that's the name of a person. So should Sophie tell someone about the giant, also needs a capital letter, giant's activities, question mark, because this is a question. I'm asking a question. Should she do something? And I know it's a question because we're about to answer it. Okay, so first thing we need to do is find points to support your argument. Before I do that, I actually need to start off with a great starter. So I am going to decide, my opinion is that Sophie should tell someone about the Giants activities. So I'm going to start off by saying, personally, comma, I believe that Sophie, and I'm going to leave a line just in case I need to add anything else because I'm doing a lot of writing. I believe that Sophie should tell someone about the Giants activities. Full stop. So I've done my opener. Now, I'm just going to read that back before I go on. Personally, I believe that Sophie should tell someone about the Giants activities. I'm happy with that. I'm going to find points to support my argument. So my first point that I'm going to use is going to be the giant was being, and I'm going to use the word suspicious. I'm going to use the word suspicious because I could see that the giant was hiding in shadowy places where there was no moonlight. And to me, that's quite a suspicious thing to do. Why was the giant hiding in shadowy places where there was no moonlight? So I'm going to start off by saying, so I personally believe that Sophie should tell someone about the Giants' activities. The giant was behaving, and I'm going to use an adverb, suspiciously. Suspiciously. Full stop. And now I'm going to find points to support my argument. So the giant was behaving suspiciously. I need to use evidence from the text. What evidence have I got from the text to suggest that the giant was behaving suspiciously? So I'm going to find evidence. And here it says, I'm going to use my red pen for the big question so you can differentiate it. It was hiding in the shadowy places where there was no moonlight. So I'm just going to add on to that. The giant was behaving suspiciously, comma, by, I'm going to use lurking. Lurking in the shadowy places, comma, where the, and this there, THERE, was no moonlight. Full stop. So that's my first point. The giant was behaving suspiciously by lurking in the shadowy places where there was no moonlight. I'm now going to choose another point and explain that in more detail. So I'm going to go back to my points. And I'm going to say, I'm going to use an add, a sentence starter that's going to add information. So I'm going to say, in addition, or you could say additionally. Which one am I going to choose? Let's use, well, this is a new paragraph, so I'm just going to start a new paragraph. I'm going to say additionally, comma. I'm going to cross that out. I'm going to say additionally that Sophie does not know if the giant is a safe person to be around. Not know if the giant is a safe person to be around. And I'm going to use evidence from, I'm now going to use evidence from the text to support my answer. So how does Sophie not know that the giant is a safe person to be around? Actually, it describes him here as having, he said he had two bright flashing eyes and the eyes were staring straight at Sophie and there was a fierce and devilish look about them. So the giant having a fierce and devilish look about them suggests he's probably quite naughty and maybe perhaps going to do something evil. So I'm going to say the text, in fact, I'm going to say the author describes the giant, and I'm going to turn my page, as having a fierce, I'm just going to put this in speech marks because it's come from the text. Actually, I'm going to put it in quote marks, so just one, fierce and devilish look. We'll stop. So let me just read what I've written so far. Additionally, Sophie does not know if the giant is a safe person to be around. The author describes the giant as having a fierce and devilish look. I'm going to make that comma actually. This suggests that perhaps the giant does not have good intentions. Oh, and I've got no space, so I'm just going to cross it out on mine to here. Intentions, plural. Fantastic. So, I'm just going to read back what I've written so far. Personally, I believe that Sophie should tell someone about the giant's activities. The giant was behaving suspiciously by lurking in the shadowy places where there was no moonlight. Additionally, Sophie does not know if the giant is a safe person to be around. The author describes the giant as having a fierce and devilish look. This suggests that perhaps the giant does not have good intentions. And I'm just going to do a concluding paragraph. So let me leave overall. And I'm just going to restate my point, which is that Sophie should tell somebody about the giant's activities. Overall, I believe it would be in Sophie's best interests. You don't do much neat handwriting than me. To tell someone about the giant's activities that's a scene or not, in order to prevent him from causing any trouble. Full stop. Just going to read my last paragraph back to you. Overall, I believe it would be in Sophie's best interests to tell someone about the giant's activities in order to prevent him from causing any trouble. Full stop. So as you can see from that, I have structured my argument. I've only chosen one side. I'm not writing both sides of the argument. I've only written one. I'm just going to go back to here. So you need to decide which side do you agree with more, and you're going to write the big question. You're going to write the answer to the big question supporting that view. Okay, make sure you use evidence from the text to support your answer. And you can start it with an opener and then follow the steps to complete that. Can't wait to see your work on Seesaw. I hope you enjoy answering this big question. Thank you for that, and I will see you later. Bye, you three.